In this video, we are going to talk about Fast and Furious 7 movie. We will discuss movie story, we will talk about the movie production details, box office, and movie reviews. We will also include the personal reactions. So, let's begin. 7 films deep into the Fast and Furious film series. There's a very little to be done to convince non-fans that this would be a ripe time to hop abroad. The whole enterprise itself is an anomaly, its box office juggernaut with a strangely complex mythology and interwoven timeline born of a franchise that was trying to course correct in fits and starts, only to stumble upon a wonderfully diverse and generally likable ensemble culled from each of the first 4 films. But the faithful who love this series' very earnest blend of massive set piece with familial melodrama will be happy to know that Furious 7 continues to up the ante with bigger and more audacious action spectacle without losing sight of the supremely silly heart at its center. To attempt to explain the breathlessly paced plot that popples this 137 minutes behemoth would be fully, and it is mostly professionally getting the gang back together to chase a technological misfortune that could prove deadly in the wrong hands. Hands that happen to belong to action movie deity Jason Statham. Statham Deckard Shaw is the brother of Luke Evans, villain from the sixth installment, and he is out for blood to compensate for what the gang did to his family. For some franchise, these kind of more personal stakes would lead to a more street level and intimate action picture. But instead, we have the biggest and boldest set piece yet attempted, including a daring rescue mission staged on the side of a mountain that's an action movie all-timer. Despite this inflected running time, the film does not sag under its weight. It instead leaves you exhausted, having run a cinematic marathon of breathless action filmmaking. One of the main questions surrounding Furious 7 was how they'd managed to complete the film once Paul Walker passed away unexpectedly in the middle of shooting, and I'm happy to report they managed it with a surprising amount of grace and class. The scenes showing only infrequently amid the chaos, body double, computer generated face swapping, and footage from previous films all combined to complete his performance. It's worthy tribute to an actor whose genius screen presence helped make this series what it was, and I can guarantee a fair amount of tears being shed amongst Tharagors this weekend as this film pays tribute. It's hard to imagine the creatives in charge of steering this billion-dollar enterprise managing to continue this high-wire act in perpetuity. Furious 7, at least on this first viewing, is a step below the previous 2 entries despite its gonzo action sequence, losing a bit of its luster by relegating The Rock to the sideline for much of the picture and having lost a few of its massive ensemble due to the ever increasing stakes they have established. James Wan has a bit more frantic style of shooting and editing than previous helmer Justin Lin, but he proves himself more than capable of handling this massive undertaking. It would have been nice for this film to have a bigger female presence instead of a bigger presence of slow motion shots of females posteriors, and to finally allow Michelle Rodriguez the chance to cave in some male skulls instead of pairing her off with a female counterpart for her now requested fight sequence. But these are minor patterns in the face of what is a widely entertaining motion picture, a film that managed to combine absurd action with a gently moving tribute to a final comrade. Furious 7, directed by James Wan, stars Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. Most film series have the good sense to end after 2 or 3 pictures when the money's been made and the franchise cannot really go any further. Those tentpoles that tempt fate, however, and expand beyond their expiration date invariably result in debscal of the highest degree, abysmal efforts like A Good Day to Die Hard and Jaws the Revenge. But then there's the curious case of the Fast and Furious flicks after an okay first entry and 3 sequels that were basically running on empty. The franchise came roaring back with 2011 Fast 5, which proved to be the best in the series. The next picture, 2013 Fast and Furious 6, was almost as good, and now we have Furious 7, which rests just below that one on the totem pole. I suspect any more additions to this franchise might be pushing it, wearing the series back to the days of Too Fast, Too Furious. But for now, let's just marvel at how much Milik the studio has gotten out of what's basically 1950s style B programmer supercharged for contemporary audience. Previously on FNF, the take at the end of part 6 found dapper British chap played by Jason Statham killing one of the members of the DIY family lorded over by Dom Toretto. The assassin is Deckard Shaw, brother to the villain vanquished by the speed racer in the last installment. Deckard is out for revenge, meaning no one is safe, not Tom, not Letty, not married with child couple Brian and Mia, and not federal agent Luke Hobbs. After Deckard places one of the gang in the hospital with severe injuries, the rest reunite with Roman and take not only to protect one another but also to carry out an assignment at the request of a shadowy agent, Kurt Russell, who ensures Tom he can help him nail Deckard. When Walker was tragically killed in a car crash halfway through production, the decision was made to complete the film rather than scrap it. To achieve that result, director James Wan and his new employed a mix of body double, primarily Walker's two brothers, and CGI to fill in any gap, and it turns out to be a seamless job. But with Dean efforts as well as a touching for Paul Coda, the film truly pays respectful tribute to the young actor. But through no fault of the filmmaker, the picture does provide some uneasy moments as Walker's character of Brian O'Connor repeatedly finds himself in do or die situation. It's as these intents that a quantum overtake the underlying pumping excitement. Or will this be the only character is written out of the series, and this thought can help but puncture the make-believe fantasy with a tragic air of reality. For the most part, the Furious 7 is fast enough not to allow such oppressive ponderings to linger. There are a pair of smashing set pieces on display, including a draft but rousing bit involving one car and 3 buildings. And there are enough local switch to rival those found in a jam sport outing, and these allows the auto action to unfold in interesting and unique ways. Even if the idea of dropping vehicle from a plane was handled in a more exciting fashion in the inflated film version of the A-Team. Unfortunately, the picture cannot maintain its momentum until the end, and the final skirmish set on nocturnal city streets is a letdown and ultimately feels like leftover footage from the Dark Knight. The various new characters are not especially interesting, not even Statham Deckard Shaw, despite a killer into scene set in a hospital, and the short of sorry plot twist present in the previous 2 movies are nowhere to be found. Having been replaced with Days of Our Lives domestic drama at 140 minutes, this is the longest film in the series, and a bit of judicious trimming would not have been unwelcome. But why carp Deckard fans will doubtless rule over every second, and more power to them for getting their money's worth. And then some more casual viewers, however, might feel that this star vehicle spends a little too much time idling when it should be kicking into high gear. The plan was to wrap the day with yet another auspicious, bloody SXSW midnight, but it turns out the surprise would premiere of Furious 7 sparked a louder, wilder, and far more enthusiastic reaction than any late night screening I have attended yet. The latest installment kicks off with Jason Statham, Deckard Shaw, Owen Shaw's Luke Evans' brother. He is not happy about what Tom, Vin Diesel, Brian, Paul Walker, and the rest of the gang did to the baby bro in Fast and Furious 6. So Deckard sets out to settle the score by killing them all off. He is an ex-Special Forces assassin who is essentially a ghost, so the only way Tom, Brian, Letty, Tej, and Roman can stay a step ahead of him is by striking a deal with the government. If they manage to secure a stolen technology with the ability to tap into security cameras, phones, and more, they'll be granted authorization to use it in order to track Shaw. This whole mission to stop Shaw by scoring God Eye is extremely filmy and really only wind up functioning as a reason for the character to jet set to execute locations, but it doesn't really matter. The Fast and Furious films are about two things: family and getting to watch a slew of explosive car stunts, and in that respect, Furious 7 delivers big and perhaps even bigger than ever. If you are concerned about director James Wan making the move from horror to this fast, big budget action driven studio film, rest assured he makes the transition exceptionally well. He manages to strike the perfect balance between making Furious 7 feel like another Fast and Furious film while also giving it some personal flair. There are loads of picture cue hero shots and tons more with some very familiar camera moves, but Van also tosses in a number of striking techniques we have never seen before in these films. There are countless visual achievements well worth discussing, but as someone who is a big fan of this one shot in The Conjuring, when the camera essentially flips over a banister and back again, it's an exciting to see Van use similar rotting shots in the movie. Van also does an outstanding job ensuring that there's a adequate coverage of the car chase sequence and the hand-to-hand combat. As one might expect, these moments certainly require some suspension of disbelief, but one helps make the action more grounded than more Fast and Furious films are as grounded as it can be, but always keeping the viewer oriented through a very natural shot selection and progression. Another element of Furious 7 that is especially grounded and has been from the start of the franchise is the relationship between the characters. At this point, it doesn't matter what Tom, Brian, and co are up to. If you have been following along throughout the years, the moment they appeared on screen, it immediately rekindles the connection to the character, and from there, the film continues to make that connection even stronger. Minus the after-mentioned story flaw, Furious 7 is everything you'd want in a new Fast and Furious film. The car chases are absolutely insane and take the action in the franchise to a new level. There's a endless sauce, humor, and unforgettable absurd one-liner, like when a very angry Hobbs, Dan Jensen, vows to put a heart on Shaw so bad he's gonna wish his mama kept her legs closed. But most important of all, the film actually means something. Furious 7 is certainly a popcorn movie geared towards delivering big thrills, but it's also oozing with heart and passion. The characters in the movie care deeply for one another, and that devotion is infectious. However, there is one noticeable deficiency when it comes to the main players, and it's that the team mentality is not as strong as it was in Fast and Furious 6. But the group has earworks, but having grown to love characters like Han and Gasly, you cannot help but to feel their absence in this film. But then again, perhaps that's more of a testament to the franchise's powerful build over the years. The lucky few who got to see the Furious 7 world premiere at SXSW were not just a random festival attendees eager to be the first to see the film. The Paramount Theatre was packed with moviegoers who are true, die-hard fans of the series that were absolutely overjoyed to see favorite characters back on the big screen. The energy in the room and the deep, heartfelt reaction to the movie's subtly yet very moving way of honoring Walker was truly electrifying. Furious 7 movie The Fast and the Furious 7 that is released in 2015 maybe. So let's review the movie. In what has become the most ridiculous insane film franchise to ever grace movie screens, The Fast and the Furious returns with its seventh installment. This time, your heroes Tom and Brian are being targeted by the elusive badass brother of Fast 6 baddie Deckard Shaw, Jason Statham. In order to get the jump on Shaw, the gang agreed to assist a covert government organization led by Mr. Nobody, snatch up a hacker who was invented the most advanced and dangerous tracking software known to man, called God's Eyes, of course. You see how ludicrous this all is. Explaining the plot to a Fast and Furious movie is akin to information you of the ingredients in processed food. It doesn't matter because it's all about the flavor. Is the plot idiotic? Yup, is the dialogue and action so over the top you can smell cloud? Definitely. Does it ever seem plausible that our government would call on a gang of street racers to help resolve the top secret and politically volatile situation which essentially allows them to destroy not one but three skyscrapers in Abu Dhabi? Not even for a second, yet you are forgetting the most important questions to ask when it comes to this franchise. Is it fun? The answer to that is hell yes. From the absurdly fantastic opening introduction to Jason Statham character to the final reel, Furious 7 is a living and breathing example of why going to the movies can be so damn fun. This is not trying to be art, this is not trying to be deeper than it is. This is trying to get your eyes rolling at the same time your fist is pumping. Some people want to trash that experience, screaming to anyone who will listen that films like this are nothing more than the dumbing down of society. If dumb is this fun, I don't wanna be smart. At the heart of this franchise is the diverse family that has evolved over several films, specifically the last three: Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Dwayne The Rock Jensen, Tracy Gibson, Michelle Rodriguez, Ludacris. The list just keeps going and going. This is a series so open and welcoming. We can grab anyone we know, head to the theater, and we all can instantly relate. This crew bonds of each other effortlessly, and each film has managed to keep that front and center. Family is the dominant factor, and this family is one just like most of ours these days, dysfunctional yet loyal. Director James Wan takes over for Justin Lin this time, and he had no idea how big those shoes would be to fill. Lin reinvented this franchise with Fast 5 and took it to another level. Then franchise lead Paul Walker tragically died in the midst of filming, leaving Vaughn and company to reconstruct the script to address the powerful elephant in the room walking into Furious 7. This was my biggest concern as a fan and a critic with everything that happened and change, can this movie manage to thrill in the same way as the other films? Once again, I declare hell. Yes, Vaughn takes over and somehow manage to even amp up the action. We have cars parachuting onto remote roadways. We have drones in downtown LA. We have helicopters decimating parking garage. We have cars flying from building to building. If you thought James Bond having an invisible car scratched the imagination, wait until you realize these cars basically wear caps. Statham is a worthy adversary for Dom, and Kurt Russell's welcome results to action made me smile from ear to ear. Still, at this point, nothing I can say convince someone to see the seventh film in series. You are either in the car or refuse to strap it. So, allow me to address the one concern most fans will have walking into the Cineplex spoiler free. Of course, how do they handle star Paul Walker's death in the film? For this reviewer, Vin Diesel is the muscle of this franchise, but Walker has always been the heart. His effortless charm and sunny valitude optimism are an essential part to what makes these films click. Diesel and Vaughn have gone on record many times explaining the needs to wrap up Walker's Brian O'Connor character in a way that pays respect to the franchise, but most importantly to Walker himself. They absolutely nailed it. If you would have told me 14 years ago when this franchise started that a Fast and Furious movie could bring my hardened shell to tears, I would have laughed you out of the theater. Yes, it did. Much like Brandon Lee parting moments from the crew, the final frames of Furious 7 addresses our concern both as an audience and as fan of Walker himself. It is a heart-warming conclusion to an ass-kicking film that many did not predict was possible. Bravo to everyone involved. Bringing it into the finish line, this is everything you want in a big budget action experience: fast cars, gorgeous characters, underlined pumping action, and an ending that warms the heart. This franchise is not for everyone, but it's definitely for me. If they continue the franchise, which I am certain they will, the only way to take it any further might be to strap a GUI-2O to the space shuttle before the series comes to that insanity. Furious 7 is what going to the movies with your own friends and family all about. Furious 7, we have officially entered the Baroque stage of the Fast and Furious franchise. It's no longer enough that the films fleek off trick out to turbo boosted muscle cars drive really fast. Now they also have to fly in the numbingly bonkers Furious 7 cars, parachute out of cargo planes, jump one from skyscraper to another, and sail through the air to intercept helicopters. At this rate, the next helicopter will have to take place in outer space. Fast and Furious Venetian Drift. So, how's the movie? Well, it's both awesome and ridiculous. The acting is mostly lame, the dialogue is entirely laughable, and the story makes absolutely no sense. Picking up where its better 2013 predecessor left off, Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, and their diverse gang of gearheads assembles when Jason Statham, playing the brother of the previous film's villain Luke Evans, goes on a bender of payback. Since this was already the premise of Die Hard 3, director James Wan and writer Chris Morgan pile on a mess of pointless subplot and secondary bad guys like Dejman Hanso, high-tech terrorist, and his martial art henchman Tony Jaa. But the kernel in this, in order to hunt down Statham Deckard Shaw before they can be hunted, the crew agree to help a shadow government agent, a winking Kurt Russell, retrieve a surveillance gizmo that will make Shaw easier to find. Here's the thing that he is not hard to find at all. In fact, he keeps popping up wherever they go. Azerbaijan, Abu Dhabi, Los Angeles. So why they need Russell or his Gimzo in anybody's guess? And yet none of that matters. No one farts over $10 to see one of these. Fix for its logic. We go for the bananas demolition derby meme. Furious 7 delivers that with the tracked Western rush for an EpiPen for 2 hours and change. We have treated to a high octane orgy of some of the most accelerating stunts ever put on film, including one showstopper where Walker balancing on our turned bus that's teetering on the edge of a cliff. It's the masterminds behind this series were honest with themselves and the audience. They had 86 the idea of making another feature-length sequel with all of its soap opera hoffy about Michelle Rodriguez, amnesia, and crank out a 30-minute stunts only supercar are just the good stuff. It would solve a lot of problems for Fox. We got hung up an old-fashioned notion like narrative coherence and it would make $1 billion. Furious 7 is of course dedicated to the memory of Walker who died before filming was completed. The biggest surprise in the movie is how poignantly and tastefully it pays tribute to the star, who by all accounts was a devoted a family man off screen as he was on it. In the final scene, the actor looks directly into the camera and flashes his 1,000-watt smile from behind the wheel. It's a rare moment of subtlety into the franchise that otherwise has no use for it, and it's as cathartic as any car flying through the air could ever be. Fast and Furious 7, that is title as Furious 7. Box office revenue for the Fast and Furious franchise in the United States and Canada and worldwide as of August 2024. So Furious 7 2015 is the best movie in the whole series, and now there are 10 installment in the franchise. Furious 7 box office crosses $1 billion worldwide in record time. It's still baffling to me that a film franchise that began in 2001 with a fairly forgettable movie about cars is now 7 films deep and stronger than ever. Not only that, but its latest installment, Furious 7, is one of the highest grossing films of all time, and it's only been in theaters for 17 days. Universal Pictures announced today that with Friday grosses included, director James Wan's Los Angeles stunting sequel will cross the $1 billion mark at the worldwide box office. It is now the fattest films to ever achieve that benchmark, as well as Universal's first movie to ever reach $1 billion in initial release. Those are some crazy statistics. I thought it was a mostly okay movie. It's better than the forgettable Fast and Furious 6 but not as fun as Fast 5. Given the circumstances, it's a miracle it works this well, and the tribute to Paul Walker is pitch perfect. Then again, I'd argue that Fast 5 is the only good movie in the series, regardless audience across the globe have responded resoundingly, and I am most certainly in the minority there. Furious 7 just passed The Lion King, an all-time worldwide box office chart, at the 20th position and will next surpass The Dark Knight, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and probably Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Manic. How high can it climb? Transformer Age of Extinction sits as 10 with $1.9 billion, and given Furious 7 global appeal, not to mention record speed, I don't think it's out of the question for the film to break the top 10 and push Transformers 4 out. Can it give the Avengers currently 3 on the chart with $1.5 billion run for its money. That's a tougher challenge, especially with Avengers Age of Ultron poised to steal Furious 7 Thunder over the next few weeks, but also not outside the realm of possibility. By comparison, it took the Avenger 19 days to reach $1 billion. On the record-breaking front, Furious 7 has Universal's highest grossing opening in the studio's history, the second biggest worldwide opening of all time behind Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and the biggest April opening ever. This is almighty impressive. And I have to think the touching tribute to star Paul Walker has something to do with the film's success. Of course, this is a franchise that's been growing with every new installment, so the foundational appeal of cartoonish set piece and so cheesy. They are great one-liners in there as well. All of this to say Forced and Furious 8 is absolutely a given. Universal will likely take a bit more time to develop the sequel given the Herculean challenge of finishing Furious 7 is an honorable way. They no doubt want to ensure that they are continuing the series in the right manner. But it's happening. A studio doesn't just walk away from these kinds of box office receipts. What do you think about Furious 7 Ceiling Fox? How high do you think it can climb on the charts? Does it have a shot of overtaking the Avengers, or will it likely settle for a top 10 position instead? Sounds off in the comments below. Box office Furious 7 shatters record with $143.6 billion debut. Appropriately and predictably enough, Furious 7 keeps speeding out of the box office gets this weekend. From 4004 location, the latest installment in Universal 14 years old franchise took in an estimated 143 million from 4004 locations. That stands as the ninth highest weekend debut of all time and crushes the former April record of $97.3 million set just last year by Captain America the Winter Soldier. It also proved to be Universal's biggest domestic opening of all time, replacing 2013 Fast and Furious 6. Furious 7 wound up topping its predecessors by 48%, an impressive feat considering FNF6 was the top draw over 2013 record-breaking Memorial Day holiday weekend. For all its success, the triumph of Furious 7 did not come as a surprise. That there was a time when the first week of April was pretty much the last place you'd find a blockbuster. That changed in 2009 when Fast and Furious 7, the fourth entry in the series, opened with a giant 70 million. That was more than the third Fast and Furious film Tokyo Drift earned in its entire domestic run and proved that summer was not only the adventurous time for tentpoles. 2 years later, Fast and Furious pushed the franchise toward once again opening at the end of April. The film debuted with $86 million, 31% higher than Marvel's Thor, which kicked off 2011 official summer box office season 1 week later. Even following Fast and Furious 6 franchise high, it was hard to believe that the series would continue to improve its box office numbers with its nearly unprecedented seventh installment. That perception shifted following the tragic death of star Paul Walker in November 2013. The finished film, completed with the help of Walker's brother, was widely promoted as one last ride for the family of street racer audience first met in 2001. The outside success of this weekend's debut, which more than double Clash of the Titans' previous Easter records of $61.2 million, makes it unlikely that Universal will hit the brakes on the franchise at this point. Worldwide, Furious 7 has already earned $384.7 million with debuts in China and Japan yet to come. Here's a look at the Fast and Furious franchise over its first 12 years. Fast and the Furious 2001 opening $40 million. Too Fast Too Furious 2003 opening $50.4 million. The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift release in 2006 opening $23.9 million. Fast and Furious 2009 released and opening is $70.9 million. Fast 5 2011 opening is $86.2 million. Fast and Furious 6 2013 opening is $97 million. The only other new title in the top 10 is Women in Gold from the Weinstein Company. The drama starring Helen Miller has not received great reviews, 49% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to the 82% of Furious 7, and yet its estimated 2 million from 284 locations present a solid start. In holdover news, the Da series Insurgent passed the $100 million mark on Saturday. It's the 17th day in domestic release. At the same point in its run, Divergent has crossed over $111 million last weekend's number on movie. Home was down 47% in its semaphore frame and should hit $100 million in the next day or so. The news was not as rosy for the comedy Get Hard, which was off nearly 62% in its second frame. The real winner this weekend was the overall box office, which was up more than 30% over the same period in 2014, when Captain America the Winter War hit theaters. Fast and Furious 7, the movie, released in 2015, starring Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. Furious 7 is a global box office phenomenon with an estimated $143 million debut in the US and $384 million worldwide. Furious 7 shattered all box office records for the 14-year-old franchise, thanks in part to its massive popularity with Latino audience. Furious 7 opened this weekend with an estimated $143 million in the US, which is already a gargantuan achievement for the franchise. Not only does it shatter the record for the best April debut ever, besting Captain America the Winter Soldier's $95 million opening, but it zooms past all of the domestic opening weekends for the entire 2014 calendar year. The real news, however, is that Furious 7 on Furious 7 and it's officially titled at the outset of the film because why not is a true global powerhouse. The movie pulled in a whopping $240 million internationally for an estimated worldwide total of $384 million. Only three other movies have made more in their opening weekend globally. The sixth and eighth Harry Potter movies and the Avengers. Overall, Furious 7 surpassed the global debut of Fast and Furious 6, or just Furious 6 as it's officially titled at the outset of that film, by 48%. Even when considering this 14-year-old franchise explosive box office growth both domestically and overseas, Furious 7 stands apart as a phenomenon. One of the major factors driving Furious 7's success is, of course, the fact that it is the late Paul Walker's final appearance in the franchise. Walker's death is an unrelated car accident halfway through filming on Furious 7 was itself international news, forcing Universal Pictures to suspend production for 4 months as director James Wan, screenwriter Chris Morgan, and the filmmaking team reshaped the film's plot to both accommodate the footage they had of Walker and provide his character Brian O'Connor with a proper send-off. Audience have clearly responded to their effort, giving the film an A grade from the pulling from cinema score, not to mention expressing their emotional reaction to the film on social media. Another significant element to Furious 7's historic success is the film's profound popularity with Latino audience both in the US and abroad. According to exit poll data, Latino mobile codes comprised 37% of the movie's domestic audience, 25% of moviegoers were white, 24% were black, 10% were Asian, and 4% were designated as other. And Furious 7 enjoyed the biggest opening weekend of all time for any film in several Latin American countries, including Mexico with $20.8 million, Brazil $10.9 million, and Argentina $9 million, as well as Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela. But Furious 7 could not reach the heights it has without resonating with audience worldwide. The film also broke all-time opening weekend records in Bulgaria, Cyprus, Egypt, Estonia, Lebanon, Malaysia, Portugal, Romania, South Africa, Taiwan, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates, which is also the location of one of the film's most memorable stunts, and it has yet to open in three of the biggest overseas markets: China, Russia, and Japan. With such enormous worldwide success, the franchise now stands at a major crossroad, whether to continue without Walker or end on a really high note. Some moviegoers are already commenting that they would not continue to watch the franchise in theater without Walker, and regardless, it is unclear if the franchise could ever capture audience imagination with the same degree of passion. The decision ultimately lies with Universal franchise producer Neil Mortis and star Vin Diesel, the third of whom is already teasing possibility for Fast and Furious 8. Despite no official decision to greenlight the movie, somehow it feels unlikely that the Fast and Furious team would walk away from one of the most lucrative movie franchises in modern Hollywood history, especially when there clearly is so much gas left in the tank. Why? Why? And five reason the Furious 7 had a record-breaking opening weekend at the box office. Fast and Furious 7 aka Furious 7 had a record-breaking opening weekend at theaters. The film, which grossed an estimated $143 million over the holiday weekend, beat all analysts' expectations, which originally estimated the film would make between $115 million and $120 million. Now, the film is the highest grossing debut for an April movie and Easter weekend. Furious 7 also debuted at number 1 in 63 markets, grossing another 240 million overseas to bring its worldwide total to $384 million. Why did Furious 7 take off at the box office? There were mainly factors that led to the film's success both at home and overseas. The most obvious reason fans and non-fans may want to head out to see the film is to see how Universal and the cast handle finishing the seventh installment in the franchise after Paul Walker's death in November 2013. Ludacris said recently at one of the first fan screening that Walker completed about 80% of filming. Walker's brother Colin and Cody come in to help complete the rest. Its success at the box office, many people are going to see that as a tribute to Paul Walker and what he brought to the franchise, and they are going to show up for the reason. Phil Continino, the vice president and chief analyst of boxoffice.com, tell that even if they maybe skipped some of the other movies, they'll show up for this one. The big thing is what happened to Paul Walker and how they handle that odds Continino. Cast members like Vin Diesel and Teresi have been telling their social media network that they hope to make Paul or Pablo, as some affectionately refers to him, proud with the movie. The hashtag for Paul appears on screen at the films and offering fans the chance to start a conversation. After Walker's death, Diesel quickly became one of the most followed celebrities on Facebook with over $87 million likes as he shares images and stories of himself and Walker with fans in both English and Spanish. Diesel make it a point to share news with his fans first. He revealed the release date of Furious 7 before Universal had the chance to break the news and has shared news of secret meeting at Marvel and Facebook headquarters with Mark Zuckerberg. Diesel also gained a big following after his role in last summer's Guardian of the Galaxy, in which he played the lovable tree Groot, a role the actor later said helped him get through Walker's death. The 47 years old Diesel has been the driving force behind the Fast and Furious franchise for some time. After skipping the 2003 sequel Too Fast Too Furious, Diesel returned at the end of the third film Tokyo Drift for a brief cameo. After Tokyo Drift had the worst performance of the series, taking in $158 million worldwide, Universal considered sending the series straight to video. Instead, the studio turned to Diesel, giving him creative control over the franchise. Since then, each film has only been bigger both in terms of stunt and worldwide gross. It's not just Vin Diesel, much of the cast, including Michelle Rodriguez, Teresi, and Ludacris, are among the stars that have shared behind the scene image from the film before it hit theater and related anecdotes and memories of Paul to fans. Some of the biggest cast members in the film openly grieved Walker's death, and the fans responded to the enormously. The Fast and Furious movies in general have a huge social footprint. The film's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube pages, and more are a well oiled machine. While the movie's YouTube page has put out countless features on the making of the film with nostalgic clips from previous installments, Instagram was releasing 7-second long video teasing footage for the movie days before the trailer came out. The Facebook account alone has $54 million, well more than Marvel and Star Wars combined. Each social account was always putting out something different that engaged fans and felt organic. Unlike other films, the social experience didn't stop once a film was put out. Fans are never given a chance to forget about the Fast family. If you follow Minions, Jurassic World, and 50 Shades of Grey, they had the same approach with those movies where it was just kind of a slow drip marketing approach. Contrino explained where they say here's a new still or here's a funny Minions video or here's something from Jurassic World. They keep it going and they keep building it. People share that stuff and they add more likes. Universal marketing department deserves a huge amount of credit for how successful these movies are, says Contrino. They are going to be Nick and Nick with Disney this year, at least domestically, for the highest market share of the major studio at the box office. That's a pretty significant amount. They don't have a superhero franchise and they are doing incredibly well. The diverse cast. There's a reason the audience opening weekend for Furious 7 was 75% non-white. One of the things the Fast and Furious franchise excel at with so many other franchises have differently difficulty doing originally is having an ethically rich cast that hits upon nearly every demographic. A look at all of the Fast and Furious films shows that the characters speak a number of languages on screen, including Spanish, English, and Russian. Entertaining Weekly recently pointed this out in a cover story titled "This is What America Looks Like, So Why Don't Our Movies?" Diesel told EW it doesn't matter what nationality you are, as a member of the audience you realize you can be a member of the family. That's the beautiful thing about how the franchise has evolved. They do it in a smart way. Contrino tells us it doesn't feel tracked on like some movies where a Spanish speaking character pops up for an obligatory line or two that's a caricature. They don't do that, it's a fully fleshed out character who people care about. That's a huge lesson for any other content producers who want to take the cookie easy route. That doesn't work, you have to do it the right way. It's a more than just a car movie. Since its inception in 2001, the Fast and Furious films have had souped up cars, hot chicks, and ridiculous stunts, while the films certainly contain those elements at the heart of each movie. Especially the last three is family. Nowhere does this resonate more than in the film's fifth film when Dominic Toretto Diesel gathered everyone around to say the most important thing in life will always be the people in this room. Right here, right now, salute me familia. The Fast and Furious films are fun, they are silly, but at the end of the day, they are about Tom protecting both his immediate and his extended families. That's something to watch. Everyone worldwide can relate. How Fast and Furious 7 finished Paul Walker's scene after his death. Paul Walker's Furious 7 scene was completed following the actor's death thanks to some help from his family and CGI work. The seventh Fast and Furious movie was rocked with tragedy when Walker was killed in a vehicular crash in November 2013. At which point Furious 7 was only partially done, having played Brian O'Connor alongside Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel since the original The Fast and the Furious in 2001. Waka's tragic passing left a massive hole in the Fast saga. Understandably, the movie's creative team gave serious thought to how to continue without a key member of the team. Eventually, they decided to continue on in the wave of Walker's passing, and the movie went on to become a massive box office success, crossing over $1.5 billion in theaters worldwide. In addition to earning widespread acclaim for the touching and tasteful way it retires Brian in order to both finish the film and give Paul Walker Fast and Furious character a fitting conclusion to his personal journey. The Fast and Furious 7 production team, including screenwriter Chris Morgan, Dr. James Wan, and their many VFX artists, had to think decisively outside the box. How Brian Furious 7 scene were finished. After Brian O'Connor's storyline in Furious 7 was rewritten, including the new tribute to Paul Walker, the film's crew set about the task of producing some 350 additional shots of Walker to flesh out his role in the movie. 90 of which used achieved footage of the actor from previous outtakes or shot from earlier Fast and Furious films, which were the relit and repurposed. Shots were completed by having Paul's brother Caleb and Cody perform a scene in character, then replacing their face with CGI version of Paul in post-production. The other 260 shots were completed by having Paul's brother Caleb and Cody perform a scene as character, then replacing their faces with CGI version of Paul in post-production. As Beta VFX supervisor Joy Latry explained in 2015, The Fast and Furious 7 FX team created the CGI replacement of Paul Walker face by screening his brother to use them as a point of reference. Paul Walker's long history in the Fast saga helped completed Furious 7. In the end, the Furious 7 filmmakers ended up using elder footage of Walker as a reference the most because as close as the brothers were in style and mannerism, they just were not Paul when Paul played his character. Regarding to later complicating matters, many of these shots included dialogue which the movie sound editors had to create by drawing from existing dialogue previously recorded by Walker. Lettery also touched on the process of crafting Walker's CGI face and how the film's VFX artist has to be extra careful to prevent the effect from landing somewhere in the uncanny valley. Ultimately, Furious 7 bid O'Connor farewell in a satisfactory way, and time will tell whether the filmmakers to bring him back through digital rendering as the film franchise comes to a close. While the final result was not flawless, it was nevertheless very impressive considering the major obstacle the movie's VFX artists had to overcome. It all culminated in the Furious 7 ending where Dom and Brian have one final race but are far more invested in simply enjoying their time riding together before reaching a fork in the road and heading off in separate directions. It is an emotional moment of the movie nearly breaking the fourth wall in a touching tribute to the late co-star. While the moment provided a lovely send-off for Walker's O'Connor, F9 featured a non-visual cameo of the character. At the end of the film, Don passes before the family of Francis Grace, saying that there's one empty chair at the table. Mia responds as he is on the way just before a blue Nissan Skyline drives up to the home and pulls up into the driveway. The car is obviously a nod to Walker's character who drove the vehicles throughout the Fast and Furious franchise, causing many to speculate whether Brian could appear in future Fast Saga movies with the help of CGI. Ultimately, Furious 7 bid O'Connor farewell in a satisfactory way, and time will tell whether the filmmaker do bring him back through digital rendering as the film franchise comes to a close. The Fast Saga did not need CGI to include Brian after Furious 7. The remaining movies has Brian O'Connor living his best life off screen looking after the kids and the team retired him to protect his family. Killing his character would have felt intensive considering that Walker passed away in a car accident, so keeping his character alive is a great way to honor the actor without recasting for over relying on tasteless CGI. In Ephraim, Brand's looking after Dom's son too, and he has become a really useful narrative tool for keeping important characters safe off screen. Brian O'Connor's presence is felt not only in the plot point but also when his trademark Nissan Skyline pulls up to the family barbecue during the F9 ending. It gives Brian a physical presence for the first time yet doesn't need Walker's likeness to be impactful. Ultimately, Brian has become a safe haven for the next generation of Toretto and O'Connor, and the unfortunate verisimilitude of Walker's death has been adapted into the Fast saga in a way that surprisingly poignantly hammers home the series' theme of family, memory, and legacy. How Fast X handles Paul Walker's characters. Nearly a decade after Paul Walker's death and his last appearance in Furious 7, fans still miss having him as a part of their story. But the franchise is still finding innovative ways to honor this character. Prior to the release of the most recent movie in the franchise, many theorized that the Fast Saga would debut Brian O'Connor's sister in the form of Brie Larson, new character who debuted in Fast X. That didn't happen, and Larson played the daughter of Mr. Nobody in the movie. However, Fast X used Brian anyway. It means that fans now Walker up close in the action as he and Dam stole the vault from Hernet Race. For the first time since Furious 7, Brian was in action in Fast X. However, it was not in the present day story action but in flashes footage from 10 years before this story took place. The entire opening scene showed the origin story of Dante Rice, the new big bad in the Fast Saga universe. That means that fans saw Walker up close and in action as he and Dom stole the vault from Hernandez before leaving him there to die. It was nice to see Walker back again, even it was older scenes from Fast 5. Furthermore, Dom had a long look at several photos of Brian once again, showing Paul Walker's importance in the franchise. Fast 11 calls for Brian's inclusion, which could be a problem. Fast X was not the final movie in the Fast and Furious franchise, with Fast 11 currently pledged for a 2016 release. However, the movie will be released in 2026. The final movie in the Fast saga could have serious problem when it comes to Paul Walker's Brian, as the plot set up by Fast X seems to call for him to appear. The antagonist for Fast X and the upcoming Fast 11, Dante, played by Jason Momoa, is seeking revenge on everyone who took part in the heist in Fast 5, which killed his father. Since Brian was involved and is still alive in the Fast and Furious universe, this presents something of an issue. It's highly unlikely that Dante, who appears to be something of a criminal mastermind who doesn't overlook details, would be willing to let Brian off the hook. This means that Fast 11 has to either include him or risk a glaring plot hole. The other option is to have Brian killed off screen between the two movies, which would likely cause a significant amount of chagrin for fans of the franchise. Brian was such an integral part of the Fast and Furious that, especially given the legacy of the late Paul Walker, to have this character quietly written out would feel unjust. It's likely that similar technique would be used to give Paul Walker character one final appearances before the franchise concludes. However, this problem has not been overlooked by the cast and crew of Fast X. In 2023, Vin Diesel assured fans that Fast 11 would give Brian a proper send-off that honored the late Paul Walker and the significance of his character. That moment in 2016, when the world was struggling with his loss, the studio made a very bold and righteous and daring decision to keep Brian O'Connor alive. I will give you this without spoiling anything. I could not imagine this saga ending without truly saying goodbye to Brian O'Connor. Since details about the next movie still remain scarce, it's impossible to speculate about what this proper send-off will look like, given just how dedicated the creative team was to ensuring Brian's scenes looked as authentic as possible in Furious 7. However, it's likely that similar technique will be used to give Paul Walker character one final appearances before the franchise concludes. How other movies handle filming after an actor's death. Along with the immense personal loss for all that were close to him, the production of Furious 7 were faced with a very difficult task in the aftermath of Paul Walker's death. However, this is not a situation that is new in Hollywood, as there have been a number of instances in which actors have died while filming a movie. This has also led to several different solutions to how to deal with the loss of a key member of the production. How the production approaches the dilemma is largely dependent on what stage the movie is at in its filming. There have been instances in which roles simply had to be recast in order to finish the project. Chris Farley was originally the voice of Shrek in the animated movie and recorded a majority of his lines. However, in the aftermath of his death, the film could not be completed without additional line of dialogue being recorded, and Mike Myers was brought in to take over the lead role. Actor who died during filming: Chris Farley, December 18, 1997, unfinished movie Shrek. Heath Ledger, January 20, 2008, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Oliver Reed, May 2, 1999, Gladiator. Philip Seymour Hoffman, February 2, 2014, The Hunger Games, Part 1 and 2. In one of the most unique examples of a movie dealing with the death of an actor, Heath Ledger passed away early into the filming of Terry Gilliam's The Imaginarium of Dr. Personage rather than recast what would have been Ledger's final role. The movie used its fantasy premise to have Ledger's lead character morph into different versions of himself throughout the movie, with Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and Colin Farrell playing the role. The approach taken with Paul Walker on Furious 7 is a more common one, as CGI has been used to put the deceased actor face on a body double in order to complete scenes. The first instance of this was used back in 2000 following the death of Oliver Reed during the filming of Gladiator. While some of Reed's scenes were given to other characters, it was necessary to use existing footage of Reed to complete his performance in a feat that was deemed groundbreaking at the time. The movie release date is 2015 of April 3. Runtime is 220 minutes. Directed by James Wan. Writer is Chris Morgan. Fast and Furious 7 ending and Paul Walker last ride. The movie Fast and Furious, starring Brian O'Connor as Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, behind the emotional ending of Furious 7. We took a lot of care in crafting that last and sequence, director James Wan told BuzzFeed. The following story contains major spoiler about the final scene in Furious 7, so if you have not watched the movie yet, go and watch it fast. So, director James Wan faced a lot of challenging finish during Fast and Furious 7 after Paul Walker died in an unrelated car accident, but sticking his film's ending was perhaps the biggest. Since Furious 7 is Wan's first film in the franchise, he only really got to know Walker once he is signed on for the job. But that barely mattered when you hear rumors around Hollywood of like whether a person is cool or whether a person is bad. Those are usually true. Paul's reputation is that of a really good human being and a great guy and just so down to earth. Van told BuzzFeed earlier this week he was all of that and more than I finally met him. When it came time to decide Walker's character, Brian O'Connor fate won. The film's producers and Universal Pictures agreed that killing off Brian would not be the best way to honor him. If they had gone down the other path, I think I would have refused to finish making this movie, Vaughn said. The path they went down instead was to retire Paul's character in the most sincere and elegant way. Could Vaughn said we took a lot of care in crafting that last end sequence. Paul Walker's memorial video released by Universal just after his death. Stepan was to emphasize throughout the film that Brian's family with his long-time romantic interest Mia was growing. Early on in the film, she reveals to her brother and Brian's best friend Dom that she is pregnant with Brian's second child, before telling Brian in an emotional phone conversation toward the end of the film. The underlying message is that Brian's responsibility to Mia and his children would mean he could not continue his dangerous life of insane stunts like driving a car out of a plane air, crashing a car through two skyscrapers, or leaping out of a car just as a paramilitary drone destroys on the streets of Los Angeles. Steps 2 was crafting a way for the other character to say goodbye to Brian, knowing that it would be nearly impossible for Brian to interact with them in any comprehensive way. Walker brother Cody and Caleb as well as actor John Brathen doubled for Walker in the film with Walker's face digitally animated on top of theirs. Walker's brother also occasionally dabbed over small snippet of dialogue. Screenwriter Chris Morgan found a solution, placing the character on a sunny beach with Brian, Mia, and their fourth child frolicking in the ocean as Tom and the rest of his crew look on, thinking about Brian's next chapter. I thought it was amazing the writing that he came up with by showing it through Van's point of view, said Van. Vin had to carry that and allow us to say goodbye to Paul along with Vin as well. Step 3 was coming up with a set of final image that would honor Brian and Walker place in the Fast and Furious franchise, both representing the character's retirement and touching on the actor's death, in a way that did not feel maudlin or exploitive for that one and filmmaking team landing on two ideas. The first was a montage of scene of Walker from all of his Fast and Furious movies. It became my job as the director to execute the timing, said Vaughn, picking all the right montage moment with my editor from the music to the way it's edited. The second idea was one last ride as the tagline reads between Brian and Dom, ending with the film's final shot, their cars splitting at the fork in the road as Brian drives off into the horizon. We all talk about them parting in their separate ways conceptually, and I love that idea, said Vaughn. I knew I wanted the camera to stay with Paul as his car drives off with the shot just panning up into the sunset and fading to white. We did not want it to fade to black, it has to fade to white. Vaughn exhaled slowly, thinking back on spending so much time looking at Parker's face while he was editing the movie. That was hard, he said. Even now, just talking about it is enough. Every time I watch the end of the movie, it is still a tough one to get through. Furious 7, which Brian O'Connor seen, was not Paul Walker. After Paul Walker tragically died in 2013 during the filming of Furious 7, the team faced the difficult task of giving Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, a proper send off from the franchise. Indeed, Walker's Fast and Furious role has come to define the vast majority of the action, crime, and street racing movie saga. Producer Neil Mortis said that in the immediate aftermath of Walker's death, they were so lost that they thought they would have to cancel the movie. But instead, its ending had to be changed. In November 2013, while in Santa Clarita, CA of a fundraiser, Walker met up with his business partner car racer driver Roger Rodas. Walker and Rodas went for a drive in a Porsche Carrera GT, but the ride ended in tragically with Walker losing his life. Although he had finished most of his on-camera work for Furious 7, Walker's death meant that the film ultimately had to be rewritten and explain why Brian would not be in future sequels. This led to scene where Walker's brother came in to complete Brian's story in Furious 7. Every Brian O'Connor scene that was not Paul Walker. Visual effects company Vata Digital was brought in to help with rounding out the performance that Walker had already given. It was no small task as the effects company had to create 350 digital shots with Brian at the center. The scenes ranged from action-packed to more subtle, meaning a range of technique would be necessary. To pull it off, Veta relied on an archive of footage and outtakes from Walker's previous Fast Saga performance and his brothers. Combined with the actor's work from the entirety of Fast and Furious, Paul Walker's brother role played seen as Brian to provide templates for Veta with Walker's two brothers Caleb and Cody and actor John Branson serving as body double. Veta CGI artists were able to digitally overlay Walker's face and create a convincing performance. These are some of the scenes that pay tribute to Paul Walker, Brian O'Connor Fast Saga legacy. Brian put his son in the back seat of a minivan. Brian is looking at a computer with Mia, comforting him. Brian share an embrace with Mia. The family, including Brian, looking out over Los Angeles, pondering their next move, driving a car while Tom tends to a wanted Mr. Nobody, sitting at the pool with Dom. Brian smile. What was the hardest Brian soon to recreate without Paul Walker? Brian standing with the rest of the crew was particularly hard to render digitally because it involved a close up of his face as he turns to Dom. However, the shot works well enough that it was later used for marketing materials, including the poster for Furious 7. Another challenging scene for the Furious 7 VFX team was the one where Walker Brian hold up a hard drive. Brian was tackling with the idea of leaving the fast life behind for his family, and the digital rendering of the late actor had to showcase that in his official performance. All told, the company's employees did the best they could with CGI Paul Walker digitally renting him in a way that honored the actor legacy in the Fast and Furious franchise and the arc of Brian. The final sequence through carries the most emotional weight as it stares at Walker's goodbye as Brian, Dome, and the family are looking on as Brian, Mia, and their son are struggling near the beach Walter. Dom gets up to leave without saying goodbye, but Brian follows him in his own car, catching up at a stop sign. The two share a look one last time, and the film ends with Brian and Dom going their separate ways as the road takes them to their next destination. In the end, the results of creating a CGI Paul Walker for finishing the film were met with varying degrees of success. Consequently, Van refused to comment on which of Walker's performances were real and which were not. He commented, "It's very important that people go into this movie not fixated on trying to work out which is Paul, which is not Paul. I want them to just watch the movie and enjoy the film and be caught up in the emotion of it all." While that digital shot may flirt with the Uncanny Valley, Furious 7 does give Walker's character a worthy send-off in 2015. Brian O'Connor returned in Fast and Furious explained, F9 cleverly avoided all the problem associated with CGI by putting a different spin on Paul Walker Fast and Furious return. Walker character Brian does not appear at all in the movie, but it's clear that he is driving the blue 1999 Nissan Skyline GTR that shows up at Dom's house in the final scene. Prior to this, Dom notices an empty chair at their table during a barbecue, and Mia tells Tom that the last guest will be arriving shortly. Considering Brian's love of Nissan and the context of the situation before his car appeared, it was undoubtedly Brian O'Connor behind the wheel. This was a much less risky way of bringing Paul Walker Brian back, moreover, in a franchise that has grown more over the top as time goes on. This was a highly refreshing and surprisingly dose of subtlety, which serves as an emotional tribute to Walker's character as well. Indeed, Brian was such a powerful and foundational force in the Fast saga that he didn't even really need to appear in F9 in order to make a conceiving return. How Brian O'Connor returns in Fast X. So, in Fast X, Brian O'Connor returned to the franchise but only in glimpses of the past. The movie opens in a flashback to the moments just before Dom and Brian's infamous vault heist from Fast 5 with Harnet's rise, introducing his son and new franchise villain Dante Race. This time, Paul Walker Fast and Furious character is once again rendered in CGI but only in brief moments of action, allowing Fast X to avoid the uncanny valley effect entirely. As the flashback heist from F9 or F5 commences, it's revealed that Dom and Brian actually made their worst enemy on that day, with Dante seeking revenge for his father's death throughout Fast X. Vin Diesel has confirmed that Fast 11 is in the cards and that they are considering turning Fast X into a full trilogy, meaning that the last movie in the franchise could actually be Fast 12. It will be interesting to see how the franchise can give Brian a proper send off if he is to appear again in the next one or two movies. Brian's feature in Fast and Furious. The way Furious 7 handled the death of Paul Walker was met with a lot of acclaim from fans and critics. However, as the franchise has continued, with the absence of Brian O'Connor has become increasingly obvious and distracting. The movies continue to reference the character, confirming he is still around and a big part of the character's lives. But there are always flimsy excuses about why he is not around, despite the fact that his loved ones are constantly being put in danger. With Fast 11 seeming to be the end of the franchise, it is necessary that Brian be featured in a more substantial way to honor the character and Walker's role in the franchise before it is over. There are a lot of rumors about how to achieve this, such as having the character be killed off screen or recasting the role with one of Walker's brother. However, both of these options have also been viewed as possibly being in poor taste. The most likely and appropriate option would be to choose CGI to allow for an appearance from Walkers similar to the end of Furious 7, while it would be too difficult and risk shattering the believability of the moment if Brian were to interact with other characters in the movie. Simply to see him for a moment on screen would be a fitting way to make him a part of the franchise and give Fast and Furious fans the closure they have been looking for. Furious 7 director reflects on finishing it after Paul Walker's death. Do we just shut the movie down? The Fast and Furious franchise were forever changed following Paul Walker's death during the production of 2015 Furious 7, to the point where director James Wan considered shutting the movie down for good. Speaking to THR, Wan reflects on Walker's passing and what it looked to finish the rest of the movie. It definitely was the hardest movie of my career. I have done technically challenging movies since then, but Furious 7 just hit on so many different levels, especially an emotional one, Vaughn said. When the passing of Paul Walker happened, we were like, do we just shut the movie down for good? But we collectively feel like this movie needed to be Paul's legacy. So we wiped our tears away and sat around in editorial going, alright, how do we do this? It definitely was the hardest movie of my career. Thankfully, I had shot certain stuff with Walker while his ending action stuff, but there were still many bits missing in the film that needed Paul. I shot only half of what I needed from Paul before his passing, and then we worked with visual effects to salvage what we had. To complete that movie now in a day's world with AI technology is so simple, but we did not have that kind of technology at our disposal. So we had to really dig deep into our bag of tricks to make it work, and one of them was having Paul's brother, Colin and Cody Walker, step in and shoot the other half of the movie. We then pulled different words that Paul had spoken all through the franchise to create sentences for us. Furious 7 ends with a tribute to the late actor as Walker Bryan and Vin Diesel Dome go on a drive together, ending with the two turning in separate directions. Bond said, "This was the most difficult part of production. The hardest part of that movie was editing the ending of the movie where we say farewell to Paul. It was very tearful. It was hard to watch the ending that we put together and not cry." Now, the Fast franchise is racing towards its conclusion with its multi part finale that kicked off with Fast X last month. Leading up to Fast X release, Diesel and Brian could appear in the Fast and Furious finale in some way, saying, "I could not imagine this saga ending without truly saying goodbye to Brian O'Connor." It's possible Walker brother could play in a part in that happening, as they both said they want to have a cameo in a future Fast movie so Brian can save the day one more time. Furious 7 original ending revealed by writer Chris Morgan. When Fast 5 marked a critical and commercial high point for the Fast and Furious franchise, the series was renovated. Fast 6 was even more successful at the box office, and all involved began prompting out a bright future for the franchise, spanning many more films to come. Unfortunately, in the midst of filming Furious 7, the series lost a friend and star due to Paul Walker's ultimately passing. Production shut down as making a movie was the least important thing facing those involved at that point. After reconvening, the producer, stars, and director James Wan agreed to finish Furious 7 as a tribute to Walker, but it would involve a massive amount of restructuring, rewriting, and reshooting. In fact, the entire third act of the film was changed, and instead of setting a future sequel, Furious 7 goes off on an emotional note as Walker's character rides off into the sunset. As the franchise is about to release its eighth installment, The Fate of the Furious, with no sign of slowing down, collider Steve Wardrop recently spoke with screenwriter Chris Morgan for an extended conversation about the series as a whole. Morgan has been with the franchise since Tokyo Drift and is none of the key architect of this series. So, during the course of the conversation, Steve asked about the original ending that was planned for Furious 7, and Morgan opened up about the intended story arc for Walker's character. Well, the original ending, if I remember correctly, was our guys end up solving the problem and then kind of becoming again gang more outlaw. It was short of a happier ending that kind of end with the insinuation that they were gonna go off onto this high this job. But the core issue for Brian Paul character was the kind of who I am short of question. Here's a guy who used to be a cop and in the thick of the action and a racer and all this stuff, and now he has an amazing wife, a kid, and another on the way. Then he starts to look at his life, and it's not a midlife crisis but to say, we said it in the movies, I miss the bullets, I miss the action, and the point of the adventure was to show by the end of it that the thing that's truly important to him and his family and being there. It would not mean that he has to stop those adventures or those things, but the context is just a little bit different. He has a different understanding of who he is at his core and what's most important in life. But when Walker passed unexpectedly, Morgan says they considered just shutting the movie down permanently until inspiration struck. Then the tragedy with Paul happened halfway through our shooting. We had him in a lot of the action stuff and not a lot of the dramatic sequence, and so those were gonna be impossible to get. Then we had the question of there was a real moment where not only were we all just emotional devastated, but there was a real question of is it even possible to finish? There was a beat where we were actually all just thinking about just shooting it down and not going on with it. But we took a little time and everyone had a chance to grieve. Then we all started thinking about it and started specifically thinking about how do we build that story? What do we have with Paul? And really, for me, it was about can we give the audience a cathartic experience to say goodbye? Can we do something that is worthy of Paul that he would appreciate? So it really kind of came down to that last sequence. So I just ended up writing it out and I took it into the studio and I was like, this is what I think the end of the movie is, and they loved it and the studio loved it. That was the moment when we all agreed we need to do this. As for how this altered Brian and Mia's arc going forward, Morgan says there was not a great adjustment to be made. In regards to the story actually kind of was the same. The only difference is that where she is we let Brian and Mia and their family kind of go off to just be a family and drop the action elements of their lives and stop risking everything when family is so important to them. Otherwise, we would have just kind of continued with Brian learning and adjusting his character a little bit. Morgan also revealed that not only did Walker passing make them consider scrapping Furious 7, but they also thought about ending the franchise with Brian diving off into the sunset. In the end of the movie, we were kind of just learning into kind of a different sort of adventure. But then, with what happened to Paul, once that film came out and it did well and it was great, it could have been the end of the franchise. We actually were thinking here for a minute, maybe we just leave this, go out on a good note and leave it alone. And we all kind of make an agreement to say that we would not revisit this unless we had a story that did something dramatically different that was worthy of being done. Indeed, the loss of Waka directly informed the darker story that they hit upon for Fate of the Furious. We did 7 movies where it's basically Tom kind of holding the family together and working together and solving a problem. So we start thinking about it. And I came up the idea of like, well, what if we do the thing that's the most forbidden thing of the franchise? What if Tom goes dark and if he is our bad guy, what would the family do? So I ended up calling the studio and taking to Neil Mortis and talking to Vin, and they immediately were like, now that's interesting. There's something there. I think what happened was Paul in the last film they have driven the thought process to what his story is. I think there's actually an interesting thematic similarity in the story of this film for the team, but particularly for Letty, which is loss. They close the foundation of their lives, they lose Tom, they don't understand it, they don't know why, and it's very emotional. There's a little bit of that we get to address with the audience with look, we are going the franchise now and Paul's not with us. So we are feeling a little bit of loss and it is scary and the foundation will shake. So what's the answer to that? And I think this movie gets a good Catholic shot of lesson of how to deal with grief and loss, and the main thing is to stay through it. And at the other side of it, can you stronger and you can kind of find the joy. As of now, Fate of the Furious is intended to kick off yet another trilogy with ideas already percolating for Fast and Furious 9 and 10. But it's interesting to hear how that trajectory was altered in Furious 7. I think most can agree the Morgan and co come to the right conclusion about how to write Walker out of the franchise, and Furious 7 still stands as a touching tribute to the actor and a remarkable filming achievement in and of itself, considering the challenge that were faced in making the movie work. For more from Steve's interview with Morgan, had to say about the original idea for Tokyo Drift and plan for the Universal Monsters universe. Fast and Furious needs to solve its Paul Walker's problem. Almost a decade ago, on November 30, 2013, the world lost Paul Walker. The Fast and the Furious star had been on a Thanksgiving break from filming Furious 7 when he tragically died in a car crash. It left his co-star and fan gutted, yet somehow the Fast and Furious team was able to finish Walker's final film, on which gave him a fitting standoff while leaving his character of Brian O'Connor alive, happy and healthy. That worked so well because most of us thought that the franchise would now come to an end. How could there be any more movies without Paul Walker? Would we even want to watch them? The problem has been that the films has not stopped. Three Fast and Furious films have been made since Paul Walker passing, and Vin Diesel announced back in April that Part 2 of Fast X would be coming out in 2025 or 2026. Brian O'Connor is not there yet. He is still mentioned or shown in flashbacks, and his absence is quickly explained away. The franchise has been trying to mourn Paul Walker while also keeping him alive. It's time to make a decision and commit to it. Furious 7 runtime is 220 minute. Sequels F9, The Fast Saga, The Fate of the Furious. The franchise is Fast and Furious. SXSW Film Review Furious 7. A new director at the helm and the sudden death of leading man Paul Walker might have spelled doom for the Fast and the Furious franchise, but rather like one of its own seemingly indestructible muscle car, Furious 7 has emerged miraculously unscathed and taken over for long-time director Justin Lin. Parts 3 to 6 horror James Wan ably step up to the big action plate, orchestrating 2+ hours of increasingly outlandish, vehicular, and meme that traverse pulses and engine in roughly equal measure, completed under what were truly challenging circumstances. But seems less to behold, Furious 7 provide both a satisfying chapter in the movie's pre-eminent gearhead soap opera and a tactful, touching memorial to Walker, whose final screen appearances will help ensure that this already $2.3 billion series is 7 times lucky at the worldwide box office. When Walker died in a high car speed crash in November 2013, he was only halfway through filming Furious 7, a process that was eventually completed using a combination of unseen Walker footage from previous film and new scenes shot using stand-ins, including Walker's two younger brothers Caleb and Cody, who then had the late actor's face digitally crafted into their bodies. Reportedly, this sent the film's already enormous $200 million budget spiraling toward $250 million. But to judge from the end product and its enthusiastic reception here at SXSW, it was time and money very well spent. Although there are moments, especially during a climatic foot and car chase on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, where Walker is conspicuously filmed from behind or with his face obscured. For most of the time, Walker is on screen, which is quite often it's a high impossible to tell whether he is fully real or partly virtual. We are not so far here from the once absurd suggestion that it might someday be possible to make a brand new movie starring Humphrey Bogart or Marilyn Monroe. But for now, there is Walker, and it is a constant pleasure to watch the Extremely physical actor, he was once again hurled himself into the movie's complicated stunt sequence like a human cannonball. Although Walker could never have known this would be his final performance, is maybe the ultimate compliment to say that he plays each moment as though it were his last. And when the time does come for his Brian O'Connor to bid adieu, the movie arranges it in a way that feels fully earned and well within the boundaries of good taste. Up until then, it's more or less business as usual in Furious Land with one badly banged and burlesque bad guy from 2013 Furious 6 still clinging to life by a thread, a battered body, Jason Statham as Shaw's elder brother waiting in the wings, and for good measures a terrorist mastermind intent on what else? World domination, honor of a skull that could rethaw the polar ice caps, and one of the few actors who could plausibly take the rock and our Van Diesel in a fire. Statham gets a great intense putting Baby Bro out of his mastery, along with an entire heavily guarded London hospital without breaking a sweat, but it's revenge that lost largest on Deckard's mind. First up, a tease at the end of Furious 6 a trip to Tokyo, where Deckard helped the vacational Han to meet his maker events that finally closed the chronological gap between the third Fast film 2006 Tokyo Drift and parts 4 to 6, which effectively function as one long flashback. Then it's off to LA, where Deckard makes it clear that it's open seasons on Dominic Toretto and his entire crew. The screenplay is once again by Chris Morgan, who has written the last four films in the series. If Han Death is a burning car, so let's cast a Sambao in repel over Furious 7. It's not the only thing that does Walker O'Connor in first scene reviving the engine of a most atypical vehicle, a crystal minivan with his infant son strapped into a car seat in the back. And one of the new film's running theme is that while marriage and fatherhood may have domesticated Brian, he still pines for his older rebel outlaw days. He says he misses the bullets, knows wife Mia as if it were a perfect normal sentiment. But how much longer can or should Brian continue to put himself in harm's way when he has a young family waiting for him at home? The arrival of Deckard momentarily makes that a moot point as everyone, even still, emancipatory, readies for battle. Then comes another new cast, a silver-tongued government shadow man who refers to himself as Mr. Nobody and tells Tom he can help him eliminate Shaw. Provided Tom does something for him first, G-Man Russell needs help with the rescue of a kidnapped computer hacker Ramsey, who is being held by Hansu's Moose Joconde somewhere in the Caucasus. Unspecified political concerns prevent the US from staging an official rescue mission. Vaughn and veteran Furious Stunts coordinator, second unit director Spiro Gonzalez also staged a jaw-dropping little cliffhanger involving an overturned bus sliding towards certain dome and later a ridiculous but highly entertaining car chase that began inside one of Abu Dhabi's skyscraping Etihad towers and ends in a neighboring one without ever touching the ground. Not all of the action quite lives up to those high standards, and none of it can quite surpass the sublime. Fast 5 final in which two Dodge Chargers toured a massive bank vault through the secrets of Rio de Janeiro. Vaughn, a master of old school analog fright in his horror movies, favors a more frantic shooting and editing style here and causes his step pieces with too much CGI. The movie is also at 137 minutes, arguably too much of a good thing. Still, Furious 7 has few equals in the category of sevens and outside of the James Bond franchise, which was up to Diamonds Are Forever at a comparable point in its lifespan. It's hard to think of another contemporary film series that has run this long life continuing to offer so much pleasure. Harder still to think of another mainstream Hollywood blockbuster, past or present, with this level of ethic and psychotic diversity on display. Just because that who the character are and not because the filmmaker are trying to earn PC brownie points, it will not be the same going forward. One character says late in the film, and that's certainly true, but to judge from the evidence here, even a Walker less Team Furious still has plenty of gas left in the tank. Also joining the cast for his latest outing, Thai martial artist superstar Tony Jaa, female UFC champ Ronda Rousey, and in a blank and you miss her cameo, Agi Aslia. The film's full on-screen title read Furious 7, although all poster and marketing material bear the numeral 7. The presence of two credited cinematographers and four credited editor offer further evidence that the interrupted production took many hands on deck to properly salvage. The evolution of the Fast and Furious franchise has been an intriguing thing to watch. It went from being a goofy street racing franchise that I easily dismisses to a huge sale and paid up action series that I have enjoyed. It's a franchise that banks on its silliness and absurdity but succeeds because it never takes itself too serious and it knows what it now wants to be. I can appreciate that part of the charm of what it has become revolve around how cinematically insane they can make things. 2011 Fast 5 was the turning point for me. The drastic change in formula was welcome and the film still has some of the best action sequences of the last 10 or so years. It was followed by the last satisfying but still entertaining Fast and Furious 6. Now we reach the seventh film because naturally there has to be another film, right? Unfortunately, the path to bringing Furious 7 to the big screen has been a tragic and complicated one. On November 30, 2013, halfway through filming Furious 7, Paul Walker was killed in a car accident while on Thanksgiving break. Understandably, this threw the film's likelihood in doubt after the film was confirmed to be still on script rewriter and cost changes caused a number of delays. But now it has hit theater, and the question becomes can it sustain the crazy fuel injected fun that has won me over to the franchise? In a nutshell, yes, Furious 7 hits every note that you would expect from this reinvented series. The characters are formulaic and cliche, the dialogue is sometimes silly and hokey, the action blows believability to smithereens, but and this may sound nuts to some viewers, those things are part of the weird charm that these films have. James Wan takes the directing regain from long-time Helmer Justin Lin and he doesn't make the mistake of tackling too much with the formula. This is definitely more of the same, but fans, that's a good thing. The film begins by reintroducing us to the crew and giving us a quick rundown of where they are and what they have been up to. Dom is working hard to help Letty with her amnesia. Brian is struggling to put aside his love for the ride for the white Piker Finch minivan. Family life, it also addresses the killer mid-credit scene from the last film. As it turns out, Deckard Shaw, the older brother of the last film's antagonist, is hot under the collar and seeking revenue on Dom, Brian and his crew. After Shaw's attack gets personal and deadly, Dom and company set out to get him. The hunt for Shaw also pulls in agent Luke Hobbs, who quickly feels the full force of Shaw's resolve. Other familiar faces like Roman and Tage shows up and fill their established roles. Their automotive adventure takes them all over the world, the United States, London, Tokyo, Abu Dhabi, and a host of other places. Say what you want about the series, but their recent use of locals is one of its real treats. It not simply that it has a global feel. The locations are beautifully shot and injected into the storyline. The story itself is pretty simple, and the structure is basically set around moving things from point A to point B. It's nothing innovative or new when it comes to the storytelling. When it focuses on its main revenge versus revenge thread in its on all cylinders. But there are some moving parts that don't quite work as well. Kurt Russell shows up as a military US shadow agent apprentice with limitless government resources. He is after the ultimate hacking tool called Cortez. A well-founded terrorist is also after it for obvious nefarious purpose.